رمضان قد أهل بالصيام وأطل مسعدا أهلا وخلا ليته في كل حين.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for joining us for another series in our talks called Serenity in Salah. Today's talk is called A New Beginning. My beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, the purpose of this series is extremely simple. We're going to try to discover how best to feel pleasure and delight when we stand between the hands of Allah. As we said yesterday, we want to be like the Prophet and like the righteous people who would say, "Arihna bis-salat." Let us feel our serenity in prayer. Let us feel our peace and comfort in prayer. Instead of our current state where we feel like prayer is a chore, like we feel like it's something that tires us and drains us of energy, as opposed to something that gives us extra energy. When we come to the topic of khushu'ah, of concentration in prayer, some people believe that in order to have concentration in prayer, you just need to have a presence of heart. Your heart needs to be present, meaning when you're standing in prayer, you're thinking about Allah. And so despite the fact that that person might not understand the words that they're saying in prayer, they might not understand the Quran that they're reciting, the actions that they're doing, the dua that they're speaking, they feel like proper concentration is just to have presence of heart. Other people believe that in order to have proper concentration in prayer, you need to know what you're saying. And so they try to study the words and the dua that we say in prayer. Now most of us are in a third camp. We understand the importance of both aspects. We understand the importance of having your heart present, and we understand the importance of knowing and understanding the things that we are saying and the things that we are doing in prayer. But the problem is that we are doing both of them superficially. Our understanding of the Quran and of the things that we say in prayer is superficial. So the person wants to know what they're saying in prayer, they pick up an English translation and read it. That's not enough to know what you're truly saying. And so we need to delve deeper into the meanings. Even if you know the Arabic language, that's not enough to understand the deep meanings that we say in our prayers. And also, when we say, we want to have presence of heart and we think about Allah, there aren't any specific names or attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we specifically think about in prayer. We just generally try to think about Allah in a very superficial manner. But brothers and sisters, prayer is something that is very important. Prayer is something that is very magnificent. Prayer is you literally standing between the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, between the hands of your Creator. We can't afford to stand between His hands with superficial thoughts and superficial beliefs. But instead, it is our duty to stand in front of Allah with a very deep sense of knowledge of our Creator and of our Sustainer. So let's begin today with a new beginning, in the feelings in our hearts and the emotion in our hearts that we need to have when we stand in front of Allah. The first emotion that we want to speak about in this series, that you need to have in your heart when you stand in front of Allah, is ar-raja. Ar-raja literally means an urge or a longing or a hope. And so you need to stand in front of Allah, and try this today, that you stand in front of Allah with an urge and a hope and a longing for the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That when you stand in prayer, it's as though your heart is saying, "Oh Allah, I have come here for you, oh Allah, and I hope that you will forgive me. That I have come to you as your slave, and I hope that you will have mercy upon me." That is the worship that your heart needs to have when you are standing in prayer. A person who prays with hope and prays with longing for the beauty and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praying at a higher level than somebody who is praying without it. Now someone might ask us a question, how can I get my heart to feel this hope and feel this longing, to feel this raja in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The answer is simple. The more you increase in your knowledge of Allah, the more you increase in knowledge of His mercy, the more you will have a natural longing and urge and hope for this mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And why shouldn't you have mercy in Allah? In all certainty, Allah is more intent on blessing you, is more intent on having mercy with you than even your own mother who loves you and is afraid of any harm befalling you. Because of this, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh, he said something incredibly beautiful. He said, لو قيل لي يوم القيامة سننطلق حسابك إلى أمك وأبيك لرفضت لأنني أعلم أن الله سيكون أرحم بي من أمي وأبي. He said, if it was told to me on the day of judgment that your account will be given to your mother and your father, meaning that his mother and father would be in charge of deciding whether he goes to paradise or whether he goes to hellfire. He said, if it was told to me that they would put my account with my mother and my father, he said, I would reject it. I would reject that. He said, because I know that Allah will be more merciful with me than my own mother and my own father. My beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, the matter is very simple. The matter is very easy. If experiencing the beauty and serenity of prayer was difficult and was hard, then Allah would not have made it an obligation, let alone an obligation 5 times every single day. But instead, it's completely in your hands and in the way that you decide to think. What do I mean by that? If you decide to think that Allah will never forgive you and that Allah will punish you harshly, then your actions will lead you to a state where Allah will never forgive you and Allah will punish you. It's simply in your hands. And if you decide to think with beautiful thoughts of Allah, with husn al-dhan, with a beautiful thought and expectation of Allah as the one who will be merciful with you, as the one who will forgive you, then you're going to experience the beauty and the longing of every righteous action, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bestow upon you His mercy and His forgiveness. What is my proof for this? That it's all in your mind and kind of all in your head. It's that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself said, that Allah said, in a hadith Qudsi, he said that Allah said, أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنَّ عَبْدِي بِي, I am just as my slave thinks of me. That is a beautiful statement. Allah is saying that He is just as we think of Him. So if you think of Him as being merciful and being compassionate and being gracious, then His mercy and His compassion and His grace will come upon you. And if you think of Him as being the one who will punish you, then you will find Him to be the one who punishes you. So we need to stand in front of Allah, and this is the lesson today that you take to the masjid when you go tonight. When you stand in front of Allah between His hands, urging and hoping and longing for the mercy of Allah, then you will be in a state and be able to feel the beauty and the comfort and serenity in your own prayers. Join us tomorrow, inshallah, where we are going to speak about another very important emotion that will uplift you and grant you serenity in Salah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.